Let's go beyond the connection. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. And today we've got a really interesting guest with Cal Krome. Now, Cal, you are the head of IT at Calm, and I'll let you explain a little bit more about what Calm is. It'll calm us all down. And what I'd love to do, though, is talk a little bit about kind of maybe some non-traditional background you have. I just learned, fantastic, you were building computers when you were 6 years old. You've been the IT guy for kind of your friends' network and professional network since you can remember. So I said, I think you got it in your blood, in your DNA. And now you're teaching your daughter how to use AI and turn on lights and use Google, all kinds of things. If you could, before we get started, and what we're going to be talking today about from your perspective is scaling challenges, overcoming resource limitations, the things that we need to do to grow our business from an IT kind of network infrastructure kind of a perspective. But if you wouldn't mind expanding on your background before we start, that would be great.
Sure. Yeah. I built my first computer with my dad when I was about 6 and, was on computers nonstop from that point on. Couldn't get me away from it. In middle school, I was the one running the LAN parties and playing video games with my friends. And in high school, I was the kid selling pirated DVDs. So I did tech support for family and friends. I'd go visit my cousins and they'd be like, hey, can you fix the printer while you're here? It's just been my life forever. I just get how computers work. And yeah, like you said, it's in my blood, in my DNA. It really is. My dad's a veterinarian, and we always joke that, he has the ability to like walk in and the dog sits down, shuts up, and lets him do whatever. And I walk in, the computer does the same thing.
Never heard that analogy before. That's a good one. I love that. Well, here's what I want to do. As we talk about kind of scaling and the challenges and the issues that are there, what we sometimes forget in this industry is that we're really relationship based, right? Which means we're trust based. And you had a lot to say on that. And I want to just talk to you about, from your perspective, why is trust so important to what you do and helping the company grow?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know what every employee in the company needs to do their job. I know the basics, but I don't know which tools you need. So I have to trust you that when you say, hey, I need Adobe Acrobat, that you actually need it. That when you request access to something, that you're requesting that for valid purposes. And with super sensitive things, I'm sure there's going to be an approval chain, but a lot of times the manager trusts the employee too. So whatever you say, the manager just kind of rubber stamps. Yeah, Drew says you need to give it to him. So really, it kind of comes from when the company does its hiring. Hopefully, you're in a company that does some level of background check and basics to make sure that they're hiring good people. And really, you're giving people access to a lot of pieces of data, a lot of different tools, and you need to trust them. And you kind of trust and verify. You put in place monitoring and safeguards to make sure that if they say they're using a tool and they haven't logged in 60 days, we'll take it away. Just there's no reason to leave them with something just because they said they needed it. Make sure they're actually using it.
And, trust is a two-way street, right? So you have to build trust internally, everyone from executive management down to anyone working in the organization. Why is it important that they trust you?
Because we need to keep the ship moving. From the standpoint of IT, if we don't have the resources, we can't get the job done. So you need to make sure that leadership trusts that IT is spending money in the right places, that we're not just buying stuff we don't need. Ideally, you are able to show the value of what you purchase. Hey, we need this tool. Here's why we're going to need it. And then later showcase, look, we bought this. We said we were going to do this with it. Here's what we're actually doing and how it's working. Make sure that they don't treat IT as just a cost center, that IT just wastes money. You show them that we're providing value, whether that be because we cut down how long it takes an engineer from the time they start till they push code, or we are adding security features that customers request or demand. And so we're helping enable the business that way. Really, you're kind of trying to showcase all of that. If you do that and the company trusts you, you get a lot less pushback down the road because they know, oh, hey, when Cal comes in and says that he wants to do X, Y, and Z, like we're going to give him a lot of latitude because he's shown that that's what he's doing. We don't think he's, off buying a boat.
Really interesting. You said two things on two different ends of the spectrum here. One is that you don't want to be perceived as a cost center. What we really want to be perceived as is a driver of growth, a necessary component of the ship that is going forward and enabling all the different internal teams. And we all know, right? It's like, VCs, private equity companies, they invest in people first. They invest in the idea second. So What you talked about, and I would love to ask your opinion on this more, is how are you enabling the teams, like the high performance teams that actually run the business so that there is a direct correlation? It's not Cal and his team in a cost center, but it's an actual driver of business. How do you make those connections?
I try to think of everything as IT is here to be the WD-40 that just kind of lets things move more freely. So that comes down to like when somebody comes on board, they should get everything they need as quick as possible. They shouldn't have to wait for IT to provision their accounts. They should be ready the day that they get there. There should be instructions telling them, hey, day one, you have these 5 things because that's what your manager requested. If you need additional tools, here's where you get them. Additionally, you build that as automated as possible so that you get out of their way. If they have to open a ticket, they have to do work, then we have to assign something, we have to do work. If you can give them an app catalog where they can go in and say, oh, I need this and I need this, and it just happens, or it has an automated workflow for approval, they get things faster, they get work done faster. Just really all of that is key to it. And then the other part is just kind of documentation and finding information in general. When somebody comes on board, one of the first videos that they hopefully watch is my demo of here's where you can use our internal search tool and find the answers to questions and why you should have this as your homepage because it's going to make your life easier. And then also just here's the wiki where you can find things, but ideally you're using that search tool to find things. Really give people that menu and the answers that they're looking for in advance and just be available for them when they have problems with prompt responses.
So enabling is a big word and a big term, and that trust, because you're going to be requesting things too in terms of security and usability. You're going to be downloading patches, you're going to be updating systems, you're going to be doing all kinds of things that if they don't have trust in you, it's just kind of an annoyance.
It is, and sometimes that's even just comes through the discussions that I have with people or presentations you might make at the all hands. Hopefully you get a few minutes of IT time to say, hey, I know you got a lot of security patches and every day your computer's saying, update Chrome, update Slack, update Mac OS, update Zoom, whatever it is. And part of it is I could tell them we have to do this for compliance and security reasons so that we continue to have customers. And part of it is, hey, I'm not the guy who's pushing the updates. I didn't build them. Apple did. And so I had somebody who once told me, I didn't have nearly this many updates in my previous company, and I was on Apple as well. And so I showed them the chart from Apple of how many updates they had pushed, and it was like a dramatic uptick from like 7 a year to 22 a year. Like, look, it's not me. I'm doing my job. I can't change how many they're updating. All I can do is make sure that that it's not my fault. And ideally, we make it as seamless as possible. You get a prompt giving you, hey, there's an update. Do when you have a chance. You're going to get 3 or 4 more warnings. And then it's going to be, hey, you have an hour before you have to update.
Yeah. And they have to have trust in you that you know what you're doing and it's all in their better interest. It's kind of like being a parent.
Well, you're always helpful. I mean, that's part of why I love being in IT is that we help people. Once you help somebody a couple of times, especially on their first day, they go, hey, I have a question, I have a problem. They realize that, wow, like these people are why I open a ticket or I ask for help and I get help quickly and easily. Oh, great. I can trust them because they already have access. But if I hit a button on the back end and the thing you were trying to do just works, you get an email saying you've been granted access to X, Y, and Z. You're like, oh, wow, look at that. All right. They were helpful. I can come to them in the future.
So there's all kinds of challenges, and we just went over some of those. And education and taking the time with people really helps out. But you've been involved in a number of growing and scaling businesses. As you sit back, you kind of look and you say, okay, what are some of the biggest challenges we had as we were growing, as we were scaling?
It's onboarding and offboarding tend to be the 2 biggest ones. Depending if you're growing like crazy, onboarding becomes, you need to solve for that quickly. When you're hiring 1 person a month, it's very easy to do things manually. When you're hiring 10 people a week, it's a lot harder. And the bigger those numbers grow, the harder it gets. And so you really have to figure out how to automate that. That initially means, okay, let me minimize the work that IT has to do. But it also requires, let me make sure the hiring managers know what they need to do. If they just go, oh yeah, I hired 6 people. Well, great. What do you want them to have access to? Oh, I'm not sure. Well, we got to plan for that too. And so really making sure that they are aware of what's expected of them and ready for that goes a long way. And anything that you do early in growth pays huge dividends. Setting up 10 computers manually or trying to do any of it after they've started, you got to go back and get antivirus or management software or tools downloaded for people who already have their computers is much harder. It's dramatically easier to do it. Anything you have to do with 1,000 computers, you're going to wish you had done when you only had 100.
I can imagine. So the idea here that you just introduced is kind of the role of automation, right? What can you do on an automated basis versus, oh my gosh, I've got to actually like work physically on that computer. Especially you guys are a distributed workforce. You're a remote workforce, right?
Yep, fully remote.
So automation is hugely important. How do you think about that and plan and have that as a part of your strategy moving forward?
You really just kind of figure out what are the things that are happening the most that require work. So early on, it's okay, we're doing onboarding manually and offboarding manually. And then it's okay, we're assigning applications manually. Well, let's start automating that. Maybe we can do role-based access control, or even like I mentioned, that kind of self-service, give users that app catalog model. Ideally, you're paying attention to what are the tickets we get. Every month I got 300 tickets. If 20 of them are for the same thing, let's automate that and get rid of those tickets. And you kind of just chip away at the low-hanging fruit in that way. And then also just talking to people, what takes the most time in your day or in your week, and find out where you can cut out from that, whether that be from the IT team, because we know what we're spending time on, or from end users who say, I've got this thing that I've been doing. I've been generating this report or trying to do whatever it is, and I have to do it every month or every week, and it takes me an hour. It's like, oh, let's see if there's a way that we can simplify that for you. Any hour I save for you on a regular basis is worth a lot of money to the company.
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge part of automation these days in digital transformation. Everything is bringing databases together, bringing people together, workflows, automations. A big part of all of this is moving to a cloud infrastructure. And I know you guys are 100% cloud. Explain to me what you kind of feel are the biggest benefits of doing that.
Yeah, I mean, having spent the first half of my career in kind of older school corporate networks where you had servers on-prem, having to manage the physical infrastructure, managing the actual servers, the software patching, testing the backups, managing the networks, keeping all that functional, the VPNs or whatever security models you had to worry about. Going to a cloud model is night and day. I don't have to worry about so much of that. Google will do a better job backing up the servers than I will. Same with Amazon. I don't have to worry that, gosh, what if they ran a backup and it didn't work? And I was like, nope, that's not going to be an issue. What if 2 hard drives fail and I lose a whole array? Not an issue. I don't have to worry about that. So like I have a lot more peace of mind knowing that the kind of critical basic pieces are out of my control and being taken care of by a good steward of that. And there's some amount of like, if something breaks, that's AWS or Google or whoever, and I literally can't fix it. It's not my fault. It's my problem. But all I can really do is call people, point fingers, and tell you, hey, we're in the same boat as 10 million other companies that are using the same thing. We're all in the same boat. And ideally, that means that it's a very seaworthy ship.
Yeah. And, when you move to a cloud infrastructure, access is one of the biggest things that you think about, and reliable, resilient access. Tell me a little bit about how you've now planned for that in this cloud infrastructure world.
Goal number one is always for me to get things into single sign-on. We use Okta, but whatever platform you're using, put everything in one place. So the challenge there generally tends to be tools that have an expensive single sign-on tier. The SSO tax is real, but generally it's worth it because I know that I can manage everything in one place. And then the other piece to it is it allows you to have the same security profile across all of them. So you can have device trust, you can have multi-factor authentication, you can have different security policies depending on the device. You can even add like network based. So if you're out of the country, you get access to less things than if you're in the country. You get a lot more kind of control and functionality by centralizing in a tool like that. And then putting all those pieces in place, like device trust, you kind of have to build out the plan for what you're going to do there. But really, there's a lot of well-written orders of operations of how you deploy these things. Like, okay, get the certificates deployed, make sure you have the endpoint management in place, decide what your timeout is, like how often do you want to make somebody log in. And to some extent, you get a little bit easier of a time going, what's the password policy going to be? And you don't have to worry about it as much because you know that all the tools are going to have the same policy. And in different worlds, you might have gone, well, our email has one type of password and the computer has a different. And this other third-party tool only allows us to have 12-character passwords, and just simplify it all by going through one channel.
Oh, so what do you worry about in this new world? You're in charge of it. The book stops with you, right? It all comes to Cal's desk.
Part of why I put all those pieces in place is because what worries me is end users operating and accessing things from an unsecure device, so a personal computer that could be compromised by malware, and now all of a sudden they're logged into our systems using their secure password and two-factor, but their computer is actually compromised. And so that's where I kind of go to the endpoint device trust model. You can only access these from secured computers that I manage, I can control, and then making sure that all of those systems are in single sign-on so that I know that there's no chance that they're logging in with a username and a password that is 6 characters. Sometimes you kind of like, that trust thing comes in handy because you go, hey, you have to make sure that you have a strong password for this. Oh, but I've been using the same 4-digit code since the 90s. I know, but it's not secure for that. You shouldn't do that anyway, but you definitely can't do that for accessing company systems.
Yeah. We should have all been trained out of that by now, you would think.
Well, we all grew up in the same world of, okay, I have my password, my special word, and then it says, oh, now you had to add a number. So everybody thinks for a long time before putting a 1 at the very end. And then, oh, you got a capital. Oh, let me capitalize the first letter. So there's reasons why things have gotten to where they are because we all kind of grew up at the same time. It's like, we'll just follow, oh, they add more rules. We'll follow the rules to the bare minimum. So I'm happy that some of the policies are like the NIST guideline has changed. It used to say, hey, you need to make people change their password every 60 days or whatever their threshold was. And then they figured out it actually doesn't help anything if you make them pick a secure password only for them to be forced to change it arbitrarily. So now that's not a guideline. It's like, as long as you're using multi-factor, let them keep their secure password for a long period of time.
Yeah, makes good sense. After going through all this and years of this, what would you say are the biggest lessons learned?
Again, what I said earlier, anything that you're going to do later, do it earlier if you can. You have to plan ahead for any of the work, but things like getting device management in place or any of those security policies, the earlier you do it, the better. I guess one of the lessons is it's really painful to take things away from people. So if you go, hey, all of a sudden you can't access this on your personal computer. Well, the new person who joins could never do it on their personal computer, so they don't know any different. And so the earlier you do it, the less of that fighting you have to do. The policies and the pieces are just in place. And when they show up, that's how life operates at this company for them. And it just makes life easier for everybody. They know walking in the door what they're walking into. They can grumble, but it doesn't feel like somebody took it away from them. And that's a painful place where you have to work on that trust piece of like, oh, you're making me change what I've been doing for the last 2 years. So figure out ahead of time what those are going to be, put them in place, get the basics in place, get device management, get single sign-on. It'll just prevent you having to track things down later that will be much more painful.
And I have to ask this question because it's a topic that comes up over and over again. But how is AI changing what you're doing? And what's the future that you see of AI?
There's a few different ways in which AI is changing life for everybody, but in IT especially, I'm not a hardcore engineer. I'm not going to go write programs, but I can ask the AI to write me a script or to help me do a thing. What's the best way for me to solve this programmatically? And it will generate me working code very quickly. So as an engineer on my team, they can do a lot more than you might have thought they were able to. They don't have to have experience in that domain. They can get that experience very quickly. They just have to have competence at the basic level. And then some of the other AI functionality that I find really helpful, the search, like searching across company systems, asking it natural language questions. When's the next holiday that's coming up? Or what is the security policy on this? We have end users who we've given a bot that has access to all of the company policy and procedure documents. So they can ask, are we allowed to do this? Or what's the best way to do that? And it can kind of go, hey, based on the company policies, here's how you can do that, or you can't do that and why. And then what I see coming, and I'm not quite sure I'm ready for it, is the truly automated like IT agent, where somebody requests access to something or wants to do something, and the help desk bot automatically goes and says, oh, that is a low sensitivity tool. Let me give it to you. Oh, that's a high sensitivity tool. Let me give it to somebody else, or give an approval flow to somebody. There are places where you can go, I've noticed that you opened up a new office in this place. Would you like me to set up the calendars, the conference room resources, add the email groups? You can have a whole list of things that it just goes, I see what you always do when this happens. I can automatically do that for you next time.
Yeah. I mean, it's just pretty amazing what AI is going to help with. People in your department, are they worried about AI taking their jobs? Are they worried about their role in the future?
My team, I would say no. I think that in general, the lowest level kind of IT support help desk type roles are the most likely to be automated out by AI, kind of in the same way that the checkout at McDonald's or the grocery store gets replaced by the self checkout. I think that like first level of, hey, I have a problem and this is the error message I'm getting. Well, AI can read it, can find the answer to how you solve that problem and then reply to them very quickly. Those are the roles that I think are more likely to disappear in the short term. I think anybody who really does work as like an IT engineer, that's safer for a much longer time because it's hard to trust an AI with the keys. When an AI makes a mistake at a help desk level, it's really not a big deal. You just escalate it up to where it gets to a human. If an AI engineer causes a problem, it's going to have ripples that affect a lot of people. So you really have to have super trust in that. And we're a long way from that, in my opinion.
So, out of your entire career, if you said, hey, what am I most proud of that I've been able to accomplish? What would that be?
What I think of as my most proud piece was I was the first IT person at Lyft. And that was like a really crazy year. I was by myself in ways that from 250 to about 450 employees, I was the only IT person. And I look back and go, I couldn't do that today. I was running around. I had an early Android smartwatch and I'd be running around the building and I would hit the button with my nose because I had laptops or whatever in my hands. And I would just, okay, I'll be right there because I'd see the message pop up and I could reply. And it was just an insane year. And then the next piece of it that I'm really just scaling there in general, but specifically building out offices. I built out 40 plus offices across the country and a few in Europe. And it's one of the things I love about IT is that impact that you have on the day to day for people. And there's nothing quite like building a new office and then being there when everybody shows up for their first day and they go, wow, this place is amazing. You're like, yep, we made that happen. Love it. And then you just get the like warm fuzzies from that.
I have to ask the question, which is, what haven't we covered? What haven't I asked that you would want to make sure the audience knows?
That's a good question. I think the question that you haven't asked is what can you do or what can end users do to have a better relationship with IT? That's one of the things that I see in places where I've heard from people that don't work at companies I'm at where they go, man, my IT team sucks or I can't get help from them or anything. And part of it is it's a two-way street, like we talked about earlier. You have to ask. Nothing gets solved in silence. And there's a lot of times people like suffer in silence. And it does go both ways because IT might be like completely ignoring you or having really, really slow responses to things. But going through the right channels always makes a difference. If you direct message me about a question that you should have gone to the IT help channel for, I'm going to be a little bit annoyed, but there's also a really good chance that I'm busy and I don't get back to you. And if you had gone the right channel, you would have gotten a response in minutes that solves your problems. And the other thing, most IT guys love bourbon, whiskey, or beer. So, bribes always help.
A bottle of Jim Beam's coming your way. So if you had an opportunity, because as a human brain, we can't remember more than about two or three things at a time. If there was one takeaway that you wanted your peer community that's listening to this podcast today to take away, what would that be?
I would say it's kind of what I talked about before. The earlier you do things, the better. Planning out in advance for what's coming, especially if you're an IT leader, the company is expecting you to be planning for that. So you need to understand where the company is going and what they're doing. What are the plans for not just next month, but next year and the following years? Where are we going as a company? And what do I need to be prepared for that? If you know that, oh, we're going to expect to have healthcare customers in the future, well, that means compliance. And so you should start planning for that before it becomes fire drill at the end. You never want to be in the place where you're putting out fires. Your goal should always be to build fire sprinklers well in advance. So if you don't know what you need to do for the future, talk to leadership, talk to your managers, but start planning for that in advance. It might mean talking to your peers or the people more junior. Hey, what have you seen in other companies? As you grow, if you got people who have worked at large enterprises, talk to them. What did you guys have that we don't? And you get some 10 ideas down and go, all right, which three are going to be knockout next quarter? Or at least get on the roadmap so that we can be ready for it.
And the other audience that's really important outside of your peers is the executive team. You alluded a few times that, cost center and advocating and getting the resources that you need. If you could talk to the executive team now, what's the message you'd want them to know?
Your IT team needs to know what's coming. Luckily, where I work, I have not had that issue, but I've been in companies that I have. And if your IT team doesn't know that the company is planning a huge shift in the future or has large goals, those company kind of OKRs or company pieces that they may not even want to publicize. They don't want to tell people, hey, we're actually planning to bring people back to the office. So we're going to have to open up 10 offices next year. Your IT guy needs to know that so that he can be prepared. So hopefully that information gets disseminated. But just having the discussion with the IT leader at your company, even if it's just the IT manager at a small company, hey, so here's the goal that the company has for 2026. So you can start planning for that. And you hopefully trust your IT people. And if you don't, you need to have somebody you do, because you need to be able to have that. Otherwise, you're going to end up trying to hit your company goals and you're going to be kind of roadblocked because IT wasn't ready. I never want IT to be the place where you go, man, we can't get this contract signed because our security policies don't meet what the customers require. There's no reason for that. What all it would have taken is a 10-minute conversation a year ago to get that on the roadmap.
Well, here's one thing I know for sure. People are going to have questions. Is it appropriate that we would give out maybe a link to your LinkedIn profile that if people have questions, they could reach out and talk to you?
Absolutely. I'm happy to help people. That is kind of what I do. And I always love talking tech. So anybody who wants to chat IT related things, come my way. If you're trying to sell me a product, don't. But otherwise, I'm an open book.
Fantastic. Well, Cal, thank you so much. The goal and the mission of the podcast here is to share from our perspectives with our peer community so that we could all learn and we could all grow. And I think you did that in a big way today. So I just want to say thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure and great talking to you.